That piece was composed by the great Chopin. Did you know that Chopin was the only composer to compose music specifically for the piano? He didn't write symphonies, he didn't write violin sonatas. He does have one cello sonata, but he was able to make this instrument sing like no one else. And so today, as we explore his Prelude in E minor, first off, this is not a beginner piece. This is definitely a piece that you want to already have some familiarity with the staff, with some harmonies. But you can try to explore maybe just the melody if you are a little bit newer. The melody tends to just move one note up or one note down. But the left hand does have some harmonic progressions that we want to pay attention to. So the first thing to note is that in this piece, what we're learning a lot of is balance. And what that means in music is actually not equal, but one hand usually has the melody and one hand usually has the harmony. In this case, the right hand has the melody. So as you're learning it, can you imagine that the right hand is almost like a big giant elephant so that you can get that really full weight of the piano going down? And even though we're not going to play it like that, I want to relax my wrist down to it. Not a bangy sound, but a full sound, so that I can practice that balance. And my left hand, I want to think about it maybe as the smallest animal, maybe like a little mouse or something. And I'm actually not going to push all the way to the bottom of the key bed. I'm going to push maybe 40 to 50% of the way down. Now that comes with another challenge, which is making sure that each note in the chord plays at the same time. And that can be a little bit tricky. So a good trick to kind of combat that is pay attention to the number that isn't coming down at the same time. Let's say your 3 is a little bit behind. Focus on just the 3 and then push down. Okay, that wasn't as together as maybe I wanted it. Let me try focusing on the 1. Oh, that was better. Let's try focusing on the 5. Wasn't as together. So for me, I have to think more of the 1 to make sure that it comes down all together. And you might want to change, depending on your edition, it might have you start with 5-3-1 or 4-2-1. Our edition here actually has us with 4-2-1. So experiment, how deep do you want the sound to be? How deep do you want to press down to the key bed? So that when you play together, you have the melody above the left hand, instead of the left hand drowning out the right hand, which is what we don't want. We want the right hand melody to definitely be what we hear the most. Another trick that I like to use whenever I teach this prelude is I like to circle which notes are moving and in which direction they're moving. So for example, in the first 2 measures, we actually have 3 different motions, 3 different chords. We have our E minor, then the bottom 2 notes move down, and then the top note moves down. That's basically the motion, but then it's repeated. So in the first measure, we have 1, 2, 1, 2. Another interesting thing about this is that it's actually in cut time. So there's a huge debate because some people want it to be this slow. But I'm of the mentality that because it's in cut time, Chopin actually wants it to perhaps move a little bit more. Artistic interpretation there. But the most important thing to note in this is that you want to have first, just be as creative as you want, especially Chopin, who came in the Romantic period. He just poured his heart and soul out every single time, right? So don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to explore. Also keep in mind that we have some accents on here. So the accents are the ones that look like little carrots. Those are the notes that Chopin kind of wants us to emphasize a little bit more. I see one in measure 8. This is the beginning of measure 8. So he wants a little bit more emphasis on that G sharp. And then on measure 9, we have what we call a hairpin, which is where we want to grow and then we want to come back. So for example, this is measure 9. Growing and then coming down. So almost placing that last note. The last little tip I'm going to give you here is that Chopin used a lot of rubato, which translates to robado, right? So he stole and took a lot of time and then he gave it back. So this is not at all, I would never probably practice this with the metronome at all because we don't want it to have this exact feeling. To me, that sounds really dry, which is kind of the opposite effect that we want to have on this. So it almost has to feel like each note is labored, almost like if you've seen at a funeral that people sometimes are processing with, with this group of mourning people, and they just don't want that final moment to come, and that's what this is. We want each note to take us effort. So for example, right at the beginning we have this big stretch, and then we want to take a little bit of time there, and we don't want to overdo it either, but each note is costing me some. It's like a painful, it's painful, really. So as you become a little bit more familiar with this piece and as you get the notes under you, really, really make all of these musical elements part of your practice. It's almost like whenever you make some rice or something and then it's not really tasty enough, and so you end up having to add a lot of salt later. That's not what we want. We want the salt to be part of the ingredient, right? So you want these musical aspects to be part of the playing, to be part of the learning. So be creative about it and put images to it. This is definitely not a piece that is, sunny and bright. This is definitely darker skies, maybe even raining. So put these images to it, maybe put emotions to it, journal about it, listen to different people playing it. But at the end of the day, make it your interpretation, and that's what separates my performance from your performance and somebody else's performance. So enjoy learning this. We only went through half of it. The second page is a little bit more robust, but enjoy learning it and enjoy spending time with Chopin today on his birthday. Have fun.